What's up, y'all? I am back for another video. I was gonna review Dolly, but I figure I might just save that one. Maybe we'll review that one in October. Because I do want to watch it when there's like a good cut of it. Or maybe I'll review it like in a week or two. Either that or I'll save it for October. I haven't decided yet. But today's video is gonna be a discussion video. This is one that was literally I just thought of at the moment. I haven't done a fixing in a while, but I figured I'm gonna change it up because normally I fix a specific movie, but why not test this out? I might make this like a whole series, possibly, where I do fixings of certain franchises. So it's not just specific movies. Well, and some of them I've already kind of done, but why not do like we'll like actually specifically talk about these franchises. So this one is how to fix Star Wars, and I figured this is gonna be the hardest one to tackle. So why not just get this one out the fucking way? Because I would argue out of the franchises I love. I mean, I know some people will say like Doctor Who and Star Trek, but I like Doctor Who, but I'm more of a casual fan, and I only have become a fan in the last maybe 3 years of Doctor Who. And Star Trek, I'm same way, very much a casual. Like I've watched TNG and some of the original show and DS9, but I've never watched past that. And even then, I was more of a casual. I haven't watched those in a long fucking time. So I figured, yeah, those are probably arguably in a worse state, but I feel like of the ones I love that I can actually have some input in, Star Wars is in the worst state. Like, it's not even close. Like, I don't think it's close. I think of all of them, it's the most fucked. Like, yeah, Marvel's bad, and I think I kind of did one for my Marvel in the state of Marvel, how to fix it, but I might do like just a specific one for Marvel. Maybe we'll do that one tomorrow, and I'll get back to reviews. I wanted to do Pirates along since we're doing Pirates on the reviewing the Boys channel, but Tyler got sick, so we weren't able to get to the other Pirates movies, and we're not doing the Pirates movies. We're taking a little break, and we're gonna do the Mummy movies. So I figure I'll get back to those once we start the Pirates movies again, which will probably be in like 2 weeks. So figure for now, I'll take a break on the Pirates movies. Maybe I'm gonna wait for. I was gonna review Dolly, but I want to watch it again, but like when it's on digital and I can actually get a good view of it. So I'm gonna wait for a second viewing to do that one. I'll find something old to review. I'll figure something out. But for now, we will focus on the fixing. And before we get there, subscribe to Pin Down Podcast. We should be live again Saturday, or at least this coming Saturday, or possibly tomorrow. We'll see. It's pending right now for tomorrow, but for sure Saturday, or this coming Saturday. But and reviewing the boys. Subscribe to that. We're gonna be doing. Me and Tyler are gonna be reviewing the Mummy movies. We're gonna do the first one on Sunday, March 22nd. Yeah, I think it'll be the 22nd. Yeah. So the big Star Wars is really hard because it is the worst state it's arguably has ever been. And there's been a lot of lore damage, brand damage. I mean, Star Wars is like no one cares about anymore. And I think what you truly have to do, and people aren't going to like this, I say film wise, you stop doing shit for a while. I wouldn't be doing this Mando and or the green fucker as I call Grogu um movie. I would not be doing that. Or I would somehow try to release that on Disney Plus. Even if we take the hit finance money wise, fuck it. I almost think you'd lose more releasing that movie. So I say delay that and make that a Disney Plus movie, and we gotta actually work. Maybe if you get this Last Starfighter movie, and I think that's where you start. You need to make that a standalone story. No, you could have it set post the sequels, I guess, but no mention of those characters. I almost think you gotta treat this as like a soft reboot. Make it about new characters that are interesting. No Jedi shit. As much as I love Jedi, I think we need a little break from that. Make it just a Star Wars story. Make it about like maybe a former. I guess it had to be fuck. It's the only part because you can come out and decanonize the sequels, but I feel like that personally, this is just for me. I don't think that would inherently fix anything for me because, I make the joke, but I can't unsee Luke drinking the titty milk. He can't unmilk the titty, as they say. You can't undo it. We've seen it. We've seen him throw the lightsaber. We've seen what happens to Luke. But I feel like that's why I want to do this fixing, because I feel like there is a way. You would have to come out and try to, even if it doesn't work for me. I just think publicly coming out and saying, yeah, you know what, these movies aren't canon. They're in their own little circle. We're going to start something new. Unfortunately, a lot of the legacy characters, we just can't. You would have to take a break from them too, because they have been damaged too much that I think you got to take a break. Try to make The Last Starfighter something worth the fuck. Make it just a side story if you can get people to like that. And then you slowly break it up. After The Last Starfighter, I say you take a break from movies after that. Maybe release shows. If you want to release your cartoons and shit, cool. But movies, no. And I honestly think another thing, no more TV shows like live action. I know people like Andor, a lot of people like Andor, but Star Wars is not meant for live action television, and I don't think it ever was. Because I think there's just too much special effects, and I feel like you fall into the trap of it's just going to be people talking in hallways because you want to save budget and not have them like shoot blasters and do space shit. Star Wars is meant for the big screen, and it always has been. With a cartoon, you can do the effects and get away with it in less budget because it's a cartoon. So you can just kind of animate the crazy shit. But when you make it live action and there's just not enough action to fulfill the story, you get bullshit like Mandalorian, the green fucker, where it's just Mando doing shit with Baby Yoda, just walking around because you want to save budget. Another thing we got to bring back, aliens. The constant focus on humans has been tired because there's so many alien creatures, but they never, like, even in the sequels, the amount of time I felt like we were just focused on just human characters was ridiculous. What made Star Wars quote unquote diverse wasn't just the humans. You had aliens. You had all types of unique aliens, and that's the other thing. I want to try to be more creative with the alien designs. Have not some crazy out there designs, but we gotta try to get some unique designs, because whatever you think of the prequels, one of the things the prequels had is I thought they had unique alien designs. That wasn't in the OT. And I think the biggest one that they gotta get rid of, and I think it kind of ties in with the legacy characters, we gotta stop the nostalgia baiting. We can't keep being stuck in between. Either we gotta go post Return of the Jedi to where those legacy characters can still come back, because my prediction for Mandalorian and the green fucker and Grogu is that I think in the end of that movie, or like the last act, you're gonna see the legacy characters. You're gonna probably see Han, Luke, Leia, all together, maybe even Chewie, all together, so you can get a cheap pop. I think that shit needs to stop. We gotta stop with the cheap pop. You want to do a Darth Maul show and just so you can have Darth Maul, okay, fine. But no more like movies where we gotta bring back legacy characters. If you want to do a Vader show and try to rebuild, like basically ignore Kenobi and just do a Vader show where he's a badass killing Jedi, I say make it a miniseries. Where I know I said like no more live action shows, but a miniseries is different because you can do like, I honestly think do 2 episodes where they're both like maybe like hour and a half. So you can have enough content for each, but you don't have to like stretch it longer than that. So you're basically getting 2 movies just in a show. Because I think a Vader thing would be cool, and that can be once again a side thing. But we can't. I say after that though, no more legacy stuff, because as I get people want a Luke show, but I also think Luke's just been damaged too much to where it's almost irreparable. Because Mark Hamill, let's just be honest, he's a fuck in real life, so that's partially did it. But also, what they did to Luke in episodes 8, I would even say a little bit 7 too, making him a fucking runaway pussy. And then episode 8, just a fucking angry old man. I just feel like it's almost, I'd rather just, like, let's just not see Luke. Let's just leave Luke alone. I think that ship has sailed. Another way to fix, I think the games, that's another part. We're not going to just focus on the movies. The games need to get better. Because this is where I am more, little bit more lenient with, let's do legacy character stuff. If you want to do your legacy character shit, do it in games. Because at least with games or like an animated series, you can almost, I like cartoons and stuff and video games, but it's fucked up, but this is just true. They are almost more easy to like disregard as canon compared to film, right? Because video games are almost like, or a show even, are like ancillary content, where it's a part of it, but it's not the main content. So as much as I like, I love the Tarkovsky Clone Wars, right? But if you didn't like it, you could easily disregard it as canon because it's a cartoon. Same with video games to an extent. So I'm a little bit more lenient. If you want to do like a Luke Skywalker video game, get Mark Hamill to do the voice, and then you just try to de-age his voice somehow, do that. If instead of doing that shitty Solo movie, you could have just did a Han Solo game where you play out the Kessel Run. Maybe try to revive Battlefront, but do it right this time around. Don't get EA to be part of it. Get a different studio to do it. Make it more in tone with the Battlefront 1, 2, and the original Battlefront 1 and 2. Because that's one thing I liked about the games back then, is at least during the prequel era, was you had so many good side stuff. It was almost like a way for them to do a bunch of side stories, but they just do it in games. Or extra content to add on to the movies. But if you don't want to consider it canon, it's fine. Because, George probably doesn't consider games canon. That's fine. And I think that's all you have to do. All you have to do with the games. You got to fix the games. The shows, I say focus on cartoons mainly. I think, I wouldn't even mind like an interesting, if you do it right. Like, how, you remember, the Marvel What If comics? You could easily do a What If Star Wars show. But you stick to the 1 through 6 stuff. No sequel bullshit. Never bring back the sequel characters. This is like almost one you don't even have to say. But yeah, no sequel characters. I almost think you disregard the Mandoverse too. Ahsoka, no more of her. I know people like Ahsoka, but she should not be alive. I say you can't just outright kill her. I feel like it'd be too late even if you brought her in for a story that's current, quote unquote, and then you finally kill her, it's too late. You missed the window to kill her. I say you just don't even bring her in shit anymore. I think that's the way to do it. Because it's easy. Because someone's not in a movie doesn't mean they're not around anymore. You could just argue she's in some other part of the galaxy hiding. And I think that's what you do. Get rid of that's another one. If I was in charge to fix Star Wars, it sucks because Dave Filoni, unfortunately, he runs the whole thing now. But part of me was going to say, you got to get rid of his influence. Because I think his shit is just generic. Everything I have seen of him has just been generic bullshit or just not written well. I've never really liked his Clone Wars. I've never really have. I've never liked the animation. I always thought it was too kiddie. Right. The big one. I didn't even mention this one. we're reinstating the EU. Not all of it, but elements of it. Like Thrawn is going to be done much better. And you notice I haven't mentioned doing new 8, 7, 8, 9. It's just too late to do that. I feel like we just gotta, that ship has sailed. I almost feel like, as much as I would like, let's do a retake of episode 7 through 9, there's no way to do that feasibly. It's too late. We're in 2026. Trying to be like, you know what, we're gonna try to do 7 through 9 starting in 2026. It's just not gonna work. So we just gotta, I kind of hate to say it, we just gotta cut our losses with that. We lost the sequel trilogy, you know? It sucks, but it happened. We can't just be like, you know what, we're gonna try to make a new one. It's just not realistic, right? It's like just saying, if I do these fixings for another franchise, I didn't like fucking, Endgame. Let's just redo Endgame. No, it's too late. So I say just go forward, focus on building interesting characters. I actually think for a little bit, if you want to do films, if you want to make Last Starfighter good, have it be an isolated story. Maybe you do a lot of these little isolated stories for a little bit. Do an actual bounty hunter series. If you want to do one live action show, do The Mandalorian we were supposed to get with the original show that ended up turning into a babysitter show. Do a show with a new bounty hunter. It doesn't even have to be a Mandalorian. It could even just be a different character, different type of, you could be an alien even, where he's a bounty hunter and he does bounties for a week. You could easily make that a show. You can make that a 10-episode show where he does bounties every episode, and then maybe there's still like a little overarching story that leads to the finale. But overall, it's just him in the criminal underworld, because that's the show we should have fucking gotten with Mando. And another thing to fix Star Wars, we gotta accept that there's different tones for stuff. No more, if you want to focus on stuff for kids, that's cool. Do your kiddie kind of stuff. But I think the adults deserve a show. If you want to explore the Star Wars criminal underworld, it needs to be dark. We can't keep doing this kiddie shit. And yeah, Andor was dark, but I don't want to go there either. I want it to still feel like Star Wars. Because I don't want it to go the complete opposite way. Because everything I've seen of Andor, and I've seen a couple episodes, it's well made, but I don't love certain elements. It almost feels like you could take it out of the Star Wars world and it just be its own show, and it's fine. But it doesn't need to be Star Wars, and that's what hurts it for me. So I want it to still feel like Star Wars, but explore a bit more of those adult elements. No more baby characters either. After Baby Yoda, we need a moratorium on like baby characters. No more of this shit. No more of this clearly thing that's only there for marketing, to have a cute baby so you can have like the fucking 40-year-old moms be all fucking happy. I'm done with that shit. No more. It killed The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian, like I just talked about, had potential with me. When I first remember them announcing it, I was thinking, oh, it's gonna be like, in my mind, I was thinking, oh, it's gonna be like a bounty hunter show where it's gonna be bounty of the week. Like, whatever you think of it, think Supernatural, where it's like Monster of the Week, or even X-Files Monster of the Week. But this time it's Bounty of the Week, where it's like a different bounty every episode. And like I said, you can still have a little bit of an overarching story, but have it be like a lot of especially those first like 3 or 4 episodes, have it just be a different bounty every episode. There's still an overarching story. Maybe you get by like episode 5 and 6 is where the little bit more of the overarching story starts. But it should have been that. But we only, Mandalorian to me is one good episode, and that was before he met the baby, and then once he met the baby, the show fell apart because it just became a space babysitter show. And you could have maybe even salvaged it if you just did the one season with Baby Yoda. He returns him to whatever, and then the rest of the show is just him doing, nope, that's all the show became. To the point, and that's what the movie is now. So I want to repurpose that idea but basically make it with a different bounty hunter. I think we can show the different sides, do a Jedi show, but I do think we can't keep going back in time to certain time periods anymore. At least film wise, just so we can bring certain characters back. It's just because all you do is you just further bastardize that character in the timeline, and you add further retcons most of the time that just fuck it up to where it just doesn't make sense anymore. And that's already, we already have that fucking problem with current Disney Star Wars. Another way to fix it, the games definitely need to be fixed, because none of these games to me are just iconic like any of the older Star Wars games. I'm just gonna say it. I get some people like Fallen Order, but it is not. I think the Revenge of the Sith game's better. I think, I mean, granted, it's not the same type of game, but Battlefront 1 and 2 is better. You know, Knights of the Old Republic, or, you know, Old Republic, both those games. Force Unleashed, even. But definitely, the EU, the only reason is because there's certain characters. If you want to just, if you, my ultimate plan, if you get all these right, is we finally do into Star Wars Episode 10. And this is the episode, this is going to be the idea of basically what we should have got through 7 through 9. And it's going to be fucked because certain characters, unfortunately, are not going to be part of it anymore. But I can still try to make this idea work. Is you focus on, I was going to say, you could do Jaina and Jason, but it's almost too late to do those characters because Han and Luke didn't have kids. Or they had Ben Solo, who was basically Jason Solo, but yeah. So it's almost too late to do those characters, but you know what era, if you really want to explore, done right, and we're not counting that Acolyte shit, because I was in the High Republic, you do the Old Republic. You do something in that era. You know, you would have a bunch of characters where you could stick to, and that, the thing is, it's so far ahead, or, you know, back in time before the prequels, that you can almost stick in this era for a while. Because this is, if you do it right, no one has really ever touched this. No one has ever really touched the Old Republic era, really, ever. In movie, film, gaming, you know, movie, shows, gaming, or anything. Like, it's untapped potential. I think if you do it right, you could stick in this era for a while. I'm not saying not too long, but I say you could stick in it for a while to where you're not necessarily fucking with, like, lore and shit. As long as you don't have certain characters around. But if you really do it right, I mean, you have Bastila Shan, you have Darth Revan, fucking Satele Shan. Like, there's a couple of characters that you can use. I think another way to fix Star Wars is, if you want to build to an episode 10, I say you just go, you could focus on Cade Skywalker if you want to, you know, not, you don't have to adapt him 101 like you did in the EU. You could change certain elements if you don't like some of the elements in the main story, as long as it's not anything major. And this is where Darth Talon is around, so she could be one of your villains. And yeah, I just think there's a way to fix it to where normies can come back. It's gonna be slow, and it's gonna be a bit of a struggle. It's not like, in my idea, even if they did my idea right away, if they did one of them, it's not gonna magically bring the people back, because Disney is real. Like, I think they don't even know how many people they have pissed off with how they've handled Star Wars. Like, long-time fans that have just walked away, that I don't know if you can get back. So this is gonna be like, it's gonna be a struggle for a while, even with the idea, if they ever do my ideas, because they have pissed too many people off. They're gonna have to really win people back. But I think if you do it enough, and if Disney and Lucasfilm actually work on this, they could fix Star Wars, or at least somewhat. When I say fix Star Wars, I honestly know it's never gonna be 100% fixed. Like, Star Wars, I just don't think will ever be back to where it was post 2005, you know, or even in 2005. Like, that era of Star Wars was once the prequels ended, was just perfect. You had stuff coming out, and it still felt like a big deal, even if there was no movies for a while. Just toys and the merch. It still felt like a big deal IP, even if there was, like, even in 2012. And at that point, there hadn't been a Star Wars movie in 7 years. It still felt like a big IP. It's fucked. If they had just not done anything, you can make an argument Star Wars would still be where it was post 2006. Or 5, sorry. Star Wars would be where it was post 2005 if they never made anything. If they had not touched it, if they never made an episode 7 or anything afterwards, Star Wars would be where it was still in 2005. It would still feel like a big deal. And I'm not saying never make anything, but I feel like what they ended up making is just a bunch of shit. To where it heavily damaged the IP. So, like, obviously I want to fix it, but it's going to take some work because they've severely damaged it. To where we're in a point that I feel like wrestling's more relevant than Star Wars right now. I never thought I'd see the day. Wrestling, when you can argue was truly at its most relevant, was the Attitude Era for both WCW and WWE. Even then, it did not match Star Wars being relevant even at that time, and there was no movies. The episode 1 came out in 99, so in that big year in the Attitude Era, yeah, that's like the only one, and then you didn't get the next one until basically arguably till getting close to the start of the Ruthless Era in 2002. So it's like, even then Star Wars was still more relevant. So we're at a point where wrestling is more relevant than Star Wars. That's pretty bad. We're at a point where some people are even talking about the He-Man movie, because I think the He-Man movie comes out a week after Mando and the Green Fucker, and they think He-Man's gonna make more. And that's wild, because I had He-Man bombing just because I didn't think He-Man really had an audience, but a lot of people really enjoyed that trailer that came out. So, and if it's a dumb, fun movie and then Mando just isn't, because there is a lot of homework with Mando. You gotta basically watch the show. And I just, notoriously, this is just the truth, outside of the X-Files movie, sequels to shows in movie form don't work. Because it usually requires the audience who've not seen the show to have to try to watch the show. So you have to try to binge 3 seasons worth of show, and then even some of the other bullshit shows like, Book of Boba Fett and all that shit, and try to make it make sense. And it's like, and I think all this is gonna just be a giant side story. So it's not even gonna really tie into the show, and I just don't think it's gonna work. So I think stuff like that, Disney can't keep doing that. We can't keep doing bullshit stuff like Mando and the, why was that a movie? You could have just released this on Disney Plus as a Disney Plus exclusive film. You did not need to put this in this theater, because I just don't see it making anything. And I think fundamentally, with my ideas, I want to do stuff. If we're going to do it in theater, I want to at least have it possibly make money. Ideally, right? You want to do something, if you're going to do something in theater where you're actually asking people to spend their money, you want to do something where you think people are actually going to come out and spend money, but not do the nostalgia thing. Because if you lean too much into nostalgia, you breed these audiences that just want, Stormtrooper, X-Wing, this, like Star Wars thing. Like, it's dumb. Another thing I say to fix Star Wars, you gotta start going back to the simplicity. Because even in the later sequels where they did a little bit more complex stuff, 1 through 6, is they kept it simple. Even in the prequels, I felt like they still kept it relatively simple to where the audience understood. And one of the things of the sequels, I think the biggest issue, the more I think about it, is how convoluted it got, especially by episode 9. There was so much just convoluted shit. For dyads and fucking knives that can, yeah, fucking knives, fucking Star Destroyers with fucking Death Star lasers. Like, you get shit like that. So we gotta go back to just simple concepts. Oh, another thing with villains, you gotta rebuild the villains. No more comedy villains, because the the Resistance were just comical, man. None of them were taken seriously. Even Kylo was just throwing like bitch fits from time to time. The only time Kylo was threatening was in that opening scene where he stopped a blaster bolt, and then he just never did that again. Even in the later movies, never did that again. He had one cool scene. So I think you gotta rebuild the villains in these projects, because one of the greatest things about Star Wars is it has some of the greatest villains. Vader, Vader's a big one. Palpatine is another big one. Fucking even Maul, even though he's a little bit lower. Maul, you know, like even like with the bounty hunters, like Boba and Jango, even I would throw Jango in there. Like all good villains, even Jabba, who's like a one-off villain, but yeah, you don't have like great villains like that in the Disney trilogy. You had potential with Kylo, and then you fucked him up immediately. Just having him lose, throw bitch fits. He had one really cool scene, and then he just loses later in the movie to Rey, who just learned the Force. And another thing with Star Wars, you gotta fix the female characters. Disney shills and all of them don't want to admit that this is a problem. Lucasfilm has really fucking written arguably some of the worst female characters, even in just history. Rey, it's not Daisy Ridley's fault, but the writing. She wasn't a character. I've said for years she was just a glorified cheat code. More and more every movie, she just got more power, but she never actually got more story. They never gave her anything to work with. That's why I don't blame Daisy Ridley for this. I more blame Disney and Kathleen Kennedy for not giving her anything, because they were all about this quote unquote women's empowerment, but you didn't actually give a female character good writing. And the fucked up thing is, if you reinstate the EU, there's so many female characters they could have used. You had Mara Jade, you had Jaina Solo, who basically that's what Rey was, but they just didn't make her Han's daughter. But that's literally, Jaina Solo could have been that. You have Mara Jade. You have, even in like the Old Republic, like I mentioned, Bastilla Shan, Teal Shan, fucking all kinds of female characters you could have used that a lot of people like, because they're well written. They're flawed. They're not just super strong girl who gets more and more powers every fucking film, because that's all we could write. We didn't want to give her an actual character and development and plot development, because that requires too much work. So we're just going to make her more and more of a G-code. Make it seem like she's strong, empowered woman, but you didn't actually give her any worth writing. And I know people get tired of people mentioning this, but you want to know the pinnacle of female characters. It's Ellen Ripley and Sarah Connor. The reason everyone always brings those characters, there's many more I can bring up, but just those two specifically, is they both go through arcs, and they're flawed characters, and they struggle, and they're likable. And I'll say this, Rey, I don't necessarily think she was unlikable. I will say that. I don't think she had that problem like, let's say, Captain Marvel did with the MCU. I don't necessarily think she was unlikable. I think her writing was unlikable, but not necessarily her. And I think the reason she was so flat is because she had nothing to work with. And unfortunately, she's falling into the trap with other movies she does. It just seems like they never give her anything to work with. Because I don't necessarily think she's a bad actress. I just think they don't give her anything to work with because I think they're stuck wanting to use her for like quote unquote women's empowerment or whatever the fuck. And they don't want to actually give her anything to do. If you actually write a woman who's worth a while, people will follow. Yeah, if you get a couple of weirdos who say they don't like female characters, but they're very few and far between. And a lot of times they're no-name accounts on Twitter. Most people, if a female character's done well, I mean, I'm a Buffy fan. If you want to talk about well-written, not even just Buffy alone, the amount of female characters in that show alone that are well-written, that aren't just Buffy. Willow, Cordelia, who's an angel, but goes to angel, but Cordelia, even Tara, to an extent. That's like 3 right there. Faith, 4. Like, there's many female characters in that show that are good. I'm a DC guy. Wonder Woman done right, great. Catwoman done right. She's not like a hero in that normal hero's journey, but just an example of a great female character. Her. I'm a horror dude. I can name a bunch of great Final Girls. It's like, so this isn't like I don't like female characters. I want well written ones. I'm done with this lazy, fake female empowerment bullshit characters we get that are just girl boss characters that even women don't like. I've talked to a lot of women who are Star Wars fans. They don't like Rey. At least the ones I talked to. There might be some, but Rey has no cultural relevance. And that's the one thing, too. Ideally, to fix Star Wars, you need to make characters that stand the test of time, male or female. One of the things about certain characters that made Star Wars great is they have so many characters that are timeless. Anakin, Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Yoda, Princess Leia, even Padme, Qui-Gon, even though he's in one movie, Darth Maul, even though he's in one movie. I don't consider anything after canon. After that, he died in episode 1. I do not care. Palpatine, all these characters Han Solo, all these characters I named are all timeless. That stand the test of time, that even today we still talk about. Name me a sequel trilogy character that does that. And we're not even counting Baby Yoda because he's not a sequel trilogy character. And even then, he's a fucking stupid baby gimmick character. Those don't count. Those are almost like a cheat code. I almost see them as a cheat code to try to have a timeless character. Because they're not timeless for the right reasons. It's timeless because it just does goo goo gaga. Even though he's fucking 50. He should be talking by now, but you don't want to evolve that because you want to keep having the fucking moms come and see, ooh, Baby Yoda, goo goo gaga. Fuck. Those are not timeless characters. A truly timeless character is a character that is well written. All the characters I just named are the epitome, especially in Star Wars, of well written characters that stand the test of time. Even some of the EU characters, if you love the EU. Mara Jade's timeless. Jaina Solo's timeless. Bastilla Shawn's timeless. But none of these characters, new ones, are. So ideally, I want to fix that. You want to fix that. Because that is a problem that needs to be fixed. Because Finn is forgotten. Holdo's forgotten. The only reason we remember Luke and Leia in the sequels is because they're Luke and Leia, just because of the name, and they were already in the other movies, so they don't even count. If we're talking about those brand new characters, Mandalorian's not a character, he's a Dune armor. He's not a character. Fucking Finn's forgotten. Poe's forgotten. Kylo's even forgotten. No matter what we want hunt for Kylo Ren. Outside of those people, most people forgot about the sequel characters. You don't see little girls dressed as Rey anymore. You saw that for maybe like a year. Maybe 2. When when Last Jedi came out. But I feel like even when Rise of Palpatine and on, I haven't seen anyone in a Ray costume. I haven't seen anyone. I didn't see anyone in a Ray costume in Halloween 2025 or 2024 or 2022 or 2023. No. People moved on from that character. And then people are going to eventually move on from Mando, especially if Mando and the green fucker bombs hard. Yeah, that character is going to get forgotten pretty quick. And I think you got to fix that, Disney. None of your characters stand the test of time because it's the way you've written them. You wrote hollow characters and expect them to stand the test of time because you think, oh, well, at least it's a Star Wars brand, right? But these retards will come and see the movie. That's how they saw it. They saw it as a bunch of retards who will just see something because Star Wars name. And granted, there are retards like that. Just being honest, there are. Who just happy to see lightsaber, X-Wing, Starfighter, Millennium Falcon. They're just happy to see any of those things and then they'll fucking pop. That's the audience Disney wants. Another thing, I think I was touching on this earlier, but I want to elaborate on it more. We need different genres. I want stuff for adults. Not necessarily purely adults, but like adult focused. And then also I want to focus on, you can do stuff for kids. I want to do like different genres. Because I feel like I would not mind if you want to do something that's more horror related. And obviously don't go too far with the horror element because Star Wars isn't truly horror. I do think you need to keep the essence of Star Wars. But I wouldn't mind experimenting with that idea. Or, obviously do something a bit more kid related, obviously. That's why I was saying, like, you can do the animation stuff. Hold on. You can do the animation stuff because it's like, that definitely can be like the kid related stuff, more kid focused stuff. So I feel like I want to do something where it's for everybody, and I feel like Disney's not done that. It's almost like they don't know who they want to focus for. Yeah, you got an Andor, that's an adult related show, but then you get something super kiddie, but then I don't know what Book of Boba Fett is. I don't even know. Is that for kids or is that, it should be more adult related, but then they fucked the show up and made it weird. And then you get like the movies, which should be for the family, but I would argue they're not really for the family when you got Luke milking alien titty. So it's like, there's an identity crisis. And that's a big one. Star Wars needs to find its own identity and stop referencing itself. I've seen a lot of people point this out, and it is so true. The amount of times we gotta have Star Wars references, that's why it has these certain, like, here's an X-Wing starfighter, here's a TIE fighter, the Naboo starfighter from episode 1. We gotta have all these deep cuts so we can self-reference ourselves, and it's not... It makes you lack an identity. And I think Jurassic Park's almost falling into the same trap. Where it's starting to just self-reference itself. It's about just, oh guys, don't you notice this? Remember this from your childhood? And I don't like that the movies or shows or anything that, any Star Wars media where they're doing that. It's so obvious. And I don't think you need to do that. I think you can make something within the Star Wars universe that doesn't reference itself and have it just be, if you want that, I've seen a lot of people use this word, verisimilitude. If you want that, just have it be within the Star Wars universe, but it doesn't need to constantly reference itself like it's a fucking Marvel movie. Like, it's starting to feel like I know it's a weird thing to bring up, but the holiday special, there was toys of like the rebellion stuff. And that's the kind of self-referential Star Wars is starting to get again. I'm getting that kind of shit. It's like, we gotta constantly reference we're in Star Wars. And it's like, it's getting almost meta. And I'm just like, stop. I don't need a franchise to reference itself every 5 seconds. The only franchise that probably get away with that is Scream because of the whole meta thing. But outside of that, I don't want, like, Star Wars is supposed to have that immersion, right? You're supposed to feel like you're in another world. And I don't want it to be, I don't like the idea if you're going to do another world, the world doesn't reference itself like that. Maybe DC and Marvel, to an extent, you can kind of get away with that because the comic element. But I feel like Star Wars should not be that. I almost, as much as I love DC and Marvel and all those other IPs, as a kid, I almost put Star Wars higher because there was a higher standard that it used to stand to. Even if you didn't like the prequels or any of the other stuff, I felt like George wanted to maintain this like sense of everything made sense. It didn't fall back on the normal sci-fi tropes, especially the whole time travel thing. You know, it's like the one it was the one IP, that sci-fi IP especially, that did not do the whole time travel thing. Very much linear story. These events happen and that is it. And then you almost toy with that when you have like the World of Worlds that fucking Dave introduced, which is fucking retarded, which in my opinion is basically time travel. They just reworded it, but it's time travel. So you essentially now have time travel in Star Wars, which is just, I never wanted to have. It had this higher standard, and I want to return to that. Make it what, because now I'm almost, it also feels like Star Wars is chasing trends. I mean, even in the Disney trilogy, you could tell they were chasing trends. They had like the Marvel quips, like the Marvel movies, which were popular at the time. And I always felt like Star Wars was the standard in my mind. I never felt like it was trying to copy other things. I mean, yeah, did it? And I'm not saying it didn't take from things. Obviously, Star Wars is based on like Seven Samurai and all that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like popular at the time. The prequels were not trying to copy what was popular at the time in the 2000s. It did its own thing and focus being Star Wars. But you had the sequel trilogy basically just copy the Marvel humor, which was just in everything, starting to be in everything at that point. The self-referential stuff, it losing an identity, that's all, like, it lost all that because it tried to chase trends. The whole Baby Yoda thing, that's a fucking trend. Oh, because, oh, people like cutesy things because, oh, another, I didn't even think about that. It was a thing because you had Baby Groot. Granted, it didn't last as long, but the Baby Groot thing, that, let's be real, that's probably where they got the idea for Baby Yoda, because they saw it worked with Baby Groot, which was ironically also a Disney thing with Marvel. So, it's like they were chasing trends. They're still chasing trends. And I just don't think that's what Star Wars never chased the trend. It was the trend. And it just, it's lost that. And I want to fix that. I want to bring that element back. Because I think people saying the easiest fix is you just retcon the Disney trilogy. I don't necessarily think that just inherently fixes everything. I just don't. I think you truly gotta fix it. You really have to start from the ground up. It's just retconning it just doesn't work. You can't just say, oh, we're retconning it. That means, oh, we can just keep going. Well, no, you gotta, Disney has to work. And like I said, this is gonna take a while if they ever, for whatever reason, want to implement my idea, because they have really burned the goodwill. This isn't like a Predator, which I've done many fixings on, where there's no main lore. With the Predator movie, all they really have to do with me to fix Predator, just make a good Predator movie. Same with Alien. Same with like a Jurassic Park movie. Some of these other IPs, just make a good fucking movie. And that's it. I'm not saying Scream's fixed, but Scream 7 tried, and it's at least borderline almost fixing it just because they made a good film. That's all, or not a good film. The ending isn't great, but they made a decent film to where, you know what, maybe this is salvageable because all you have to do is make a good movie. Star Wars is past the making a good movie phase for me. You have to make multiple good movies at a consistent thing because it has been not even just movies. The games need to be good again. We need to fix these TV shows. No more shit like Ahsoka and Kenobi and Book of Boba Fett, Acolyte. No more of these bullshit shows. If you're gonna spend money on these TV shows, make some good shit. Explore the underworld that has not really been tapped into. You didn't even, we could have tapped into with the Mandalorian, but you made that a fucking babysitter show. So I say we disregard all those shows. If you want to make a live action series, I'll even make this amendment. I know I said I didn't really want to do live action series, but if you want to do them, it needs to be something like my idea. Do a bounty hunter show. It doesn't even have to be a Mandalorian. It could be even a different type of. It can be an alien, a different character, but that's in that world and focus on that. No stupid fucking green alien fucking sidekick. Maybe he has a crew if you want to do that, but they do adventures and they do bounties. Have that be the show. Go show of the week. A show like that would do well because I think people do want some little grittiness in Star Wars, and I think if you do something like that, you can do it. Yeah. And like I said, the female characters, unfortunately, Disney has really done damage to female characters in Star Wars with the characters they've written. Like, when the quote unquote best character you have is Jyn Erso, we have a fucking problem because she's not even really a good character. It's just by default she's the best because she's like the least unlikable and she at least has some flaws and she didn't feel like just a perfect being like Rey was in some of these other characters. Oh, another thing, I didn't even mention this one. Death needs to matter again. Star Wars was like the one thing, because it kind of ties in with the whole no time travel thing. Death matters because it's not like DC, Marvel, some of these other IP, especially ones that have like time travel where you can kind of undo death, basically. Or there's multiverses where, you can kill Superman in a universe and then you have a different universe that has Superman. You can make him the main universe Superman again. You could easily. There's so many, especially in DC, so many timelines. Star Wars is one timeline to up until this point, death mattered. You died. If you died, you died. But now, when you have everybody just surviving getting stabbed in the stomach with lightsabers, it's fucking a meme. The amount of people that have just survived getting stabbed in the stomach, we gotta make death matter again. So if someone gets stabbed in the stomach with a lightsaber, you would die. Because if you remember episode 1, where you had Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon cutting the door, and it was a metal door with a lightsaber, and you saw much it fucked it up. You're telling me that wouldn't fuck up your insides to where you're dead? But okay. Oh, but the future. No, if that was the thing, then why didn't fucking Qui-Gon do that then? So you just made him so he's just a bitch then who just survived. Oh, he's a pussy. He died getting stabbed in the stomach. He only got stabbed in the stomach. He died, but everybody else can survive. That's bad fucking writing, man. Like, come on. We gotta make death matter again. Bring characters back, like Darth Maul and even Palpatine. And I understand in the EU they did it, but I almost look at Dark Empire as like an isolated story, even at times, to where it's its own thing. I don't look at it as like a mainline story, even when the EU was canon. So, the books need to matter again. We can't have, because the books have just become a way for them to explain their bad ideas. That's all it's turned into the last, especially post episode 8, where a lot of the books that would come out would just be shit to try to make their bullshit writing make sense. there's a book where Leia hugged Chewie, because people complained about that not happening in episode 7, so they did it in like an episode 7. But she hugged Chewie. Why wasn't that in the movie? Or they try to explain away Han's like alcoholism. They did in the book. They try to they just started using books and the comics and all that shit to try to explain their bad writing, and it just did not work. If you want to make books and all that shit, have just good stories, not use said stories to just justify said bad writing, because that's just not good, and it just doesn't work. You just piss people off, and it's so fucking obvious. Oh, Leia hugged Chewie. It was in a comic. It's like, what? Why? It was bad. And then you didn't even have it in the movie, but you want to throw it in some bullshit book like I'm supposed to care now. Even though that's like secondary content. I love the books, but it's the truth. There's always kind of been the secondary content. Same with gaming or not gaming, but like the games and the TV shows. The movies are like really the true canon. That's even when George was owning Star Wars. Or when he owned Star Wars, that he did that. He always kind of operated like that, and in my mind, so because that's how George operated it, I operate like that too. I'll pick and choose. Like, I think Tarkovsky's Clone Wars is canon, but like, the Revenge of the Sith game, to an extent, I consider canon. But I get the idea that like, this is secondary content. It's there, and you can make it canon in your head, but it's not going to be canon. So, and so I just think if you're gonna have secondary content, still make it good. Make the books matter and not just use them so you can justify your bullshit. But yeah, I think that's all I really have to say. Before I just kind of just meandering at that point. But yeah, I think it can be fixed. It's just not gonna be truly back to where it was post 2005, or even post like episode 3, not 3, episode 6, Return of the Jedi coming out. So it may not get that high again, but at least get something even a little close. I want to do something that can bring at least I know the AEW fans use this term, but restore the feeling, of Star Wars. Because there's so much lore and so much treasure that they could use, but they don't use it. You have so much lore at your disposal, and you just give us bullshit. And you've given us bullshit the last 10 years. Or 11 years. Longer, because they've owned it longer, but if we're just talking about starting from the movies when episode 7 came out, then yeah, the last 11 years. You've just given us some bullshit. You gave us a retread of A New Hope. Then you gave us some real bullshit with TLJ that was just character lore destroying. And you gave us more lore destroying and character destruction in Rise of Palpatine. And you gave us one of the worst scenes ever and worst lines ever said in a fucking film. Somehow Palpatine has returned. And then a bunch of bullshit shows, especially Kenobi and Book of Boba Fett. So I want to try to undo a little bit of the damage they have done. So, other than that, subscribe to Pin Down Podcast, subscribe to Reviewing with the Boys. I should be live on both of those this week. Yeah. I think the next franchise I'm going to try to do one I haven't feel like I've done recently. I think we'll do is you know what? Hellraiser. Since the game's coming out, we'll do Hellraiser, fixing the Hellraiser. This is going to be interesting because This one's really, especially if you want to find the horror equivalent of Star Wars that's even in a worse state, it is definitely Hellraiser. Hellraiser is really bad. Like, so I want to try to challenge myself, and we'll try to fix that. And yeah, and I'll make this a little series. So, anyways, guys.